We know it's massive, and it's definitely still being slept on by the majority of brands.
So what's the myth here? What's the one thing about attribution that you want people to take away?
I see a world where brands that are doing like 250, 300K in GMV being able to run TV because the creative cost is so low.
So I want to talk to you today about survey questions. Not the most exciting topic, but think about it this way. On your Shopify store, you want to know, hey, how did a person hear about you? Or rather, how did they think they heard about you, right? And a post-purchase survey that happens right in the checkout on the order confirmation page, that thank you page, that could be a good place to do it. And certainly there are methods and apps that'll do this. And if you figure that out after a while, you go, well, maybe there's some other questions we should ask. And you could get some really good info this way by just really asking people one question at a time when they're most excited. They just placed the purchase. But if you were the guy in charge of the app doing the survey questions, oh my, you would have access to a lot more information here. And you would probably have thoughts and opinions on the answers to those surveys and the larger approach to the survey questions themselves. And that's what today's episode is about. We're going to be joined by Matt Bahr from Fairing, a post-purchase survey and attribution app. We'll let him tell you about it. I'm your host, Kurt Elster. This is the Unofficial Shopify podcast. Let's get into it. Matt, how you doing?
I'm doing great. Super excited to be here. This is I feel like this is a huge Shopify ecosystem milestone is joining you on the pod.
You have this app in the Shopify App Store, Fairing. What's it do?
Yeah, so Fairing is a post-purchase survey app. We ask questions on the thank you and order status page. Arguably the only moment in time where you have your customers most concentrated kind of focus. They just entered their credit card. They are making sure their order went through. And then on that surface, we can ask questions. And one of the real value props of post-purchase surveys compared to kind of surveys that most people are used to, which are email based and you do them periodically, is since we have that customer's attention, the response rates are like 10x higher than you're used to. So the company that we're building at Fairing kind of has that at our core is we think about survey data different than, let's say, a SurveyMonkey does because the volume and completion rate is so high. We kind of position ourselves more of like a data company where how do we normalize all of this? How do we take this data that's kind of ever flowing after every purchase and help merchants make better decisions in real time? So that's our core focus. We don't serve questions in other places. I think eventually maybe we probably will in email and kind of these other environments that people are used to, but we've tested them and the response rates are just so low. It doesn't allow us to really provide a lot of value in the actual data that's being captured. You're more of like just a collection tool at that point. So
So
yeah.
when did you launch this app?
So we launched Fairing in May of 2018. So it was May 8th, 2018. We used to be called Enquire for the first few years. And the initial kind of reason for Fairing was actually we weren't focused on building a survey app. We were actually focused on building a product, a B2B SaaS in the same day delivery space. And so I was a merchant for about 7 years before this. I've always been in e-commerce. At the last company, Master and Dynamic, that I was at, that Kurt, you're familiar with.
Master Dynamic makes quality headphones.
Yeah, exactly. We were one of the first brands in New York, actually after Everlane, to integrate with Postmates API at Master and Dynamic. And at the time, I was just enamored with the fact that somebody could put in their credit card information, click same day delivery, and within a couple hours, they have their e-commerce transaction at their door. Obviously very pie in the sky. Uber Rush and Postmates were definitely leading all efforts on that side. So I left Master Dynamic really to build a company in the same day delivery space. And my co-founder and I spent about 18 months doing that. We started off as a consumer app for about like 3 months before we were like, we're not consumer marketers who are going to push app downloads. There's too much kind of difficulty in the marketplace aspects of this. And we pivoted to a B2B SaaS. And we got to about 3 or 4K in monthly revenue. But every dollar was like excruciatingly hard to get. We ended up, I think we were charging $500 a month and we had like 8 customers and it was the things weren't going well. And one of those customers was a handbag company that's still around in New York called Kara Sport. I was more or less advising him on go to market kind of P&L strategies, and he was doing a ton of influencer gifting. And he kept coming to me and be like, "We're like gifting so much product, but I like it's not working. Like no one's using the promo code or the URL and the LinkedIn profile. Like, what do I do?" Wasn't even thinking about building a product. I was just like, "Oh, just go out a survey on the thank you page." I definitely Googled like improve influencer attribution. And I was like, "Oh, this makes sense." And we did so with a Google form. And yeah, he ended up coming back a few months later. This was awesome. And I was like, why doesn't something exist here? So that was really the start. That was all 2017. And then in March of 2018, I turned to my co-founder. I was like, "How about we take like 2 or 3 weeks, just a break from kind of like grinding on the same day stuff and build a survey app?" And here we are today.
Well, so I love that it's a pivot story, right? You're like, you had this brilliant idea, but as far as like that being, first app, that's tough. I mean, it's such a tough idea. And
Yeah.
so I'm glad that you figured out to go with something simpler, pivot to that, and then go, all right, we're gonna go all in on this. So what's the myth here? Like what's the one thing, the one myth about attribution that you want people to take away?
Yeah, the biggest myth is it's not one size fits all. I think the the thought that you can deploy one measurement methodology or attribution measure methodology and you're set for all of your channels just is not going to work. So if the ads that you're running on this podcast, for example, are going to be measured differently than a Facebook ad or word of mouth, like, hey, how viral is our product? All of these different channels that drive new customers to your store, you need to think about the channels. You want to think about them collectively with how you're measuring your mix, and how you're allocating that budget. But each channel does require a different methodology.
And so with this post-purchase solution, obviously I can ask other questions beyond attribution. That just seems to be the entry point. If I have to ask a single question in my post-purchase survey, is it still, how'd you hear about us? Or is there a different question you would do?
Yeah, so we would definitely recommend that. We recommend splitting the new versus returning customers. So asking new customers a different question than to returning customers. So a returning customer, you don't want to ask them how did you hear about us. It might be their fifth order, um, but still very helpful to know like, hey, it was the email that was sent or whatever triggered that purchase. So we recommend we think of these kind of as like one question. They're just different wording for different types of customers. So those returning customers will get what led you to XYZ, like skims.com. And those new customers will get, hey, how did you hear about Skims? So that's typically what we recommend. The only caveat to that though is if a brand is just spending on Meta, let's say, um, like literally just Facebook, Instagram, that's it. Maybe a little bit of word of mouth, and that's their channel makeup. Like a product like Fairing isn't going to be super helpful when it comes to attribution because you're not going to see huge changes there.
It's going
Like
to tell you what you already know.
exactly. Like so, maybe you'll confirm a hypothesis that you have. Um, it could introduce new channels. Like let's say you are getting mentioned by influencers, so it could help you understand what the next channel could be. Um, but if you're dead set on like, hey, we're a small brand, we're a couple 100,000 in GMV, we're not looking to diversify channels yet, which we wouldn't recommend doing unless there's kind of edge cases with different verticals of brands. But if you're small, like you might get more value with asking questions like, hey, why did you buy today? Or something that really understands the consumer psychology that then you can use in creative on the meta side. So it does differ, but I'd say anyone over like 750 $1 million in GMV, like that attribution question is going to deliver the most value.
There are some survey questions I like, and I've not necessarily done much with post-purchase attribution other than attribution, just like, hey, let's verify where people think they're hearing about this. I had not occurred to me that I could do customer segmentation and do new versus returning. Um, that's interesting. That
Yeah.
definitely uh, expands the utility of this survey. But for survey questions in general, kind of some of my favorites, uh, if you were to recommend this to a friend, how would you describe it? That's
Yep.
like, let's verify our positioning because how we talk about a product's not going to be how the customer does, and that's what's valuable is how they talk about it. I'll do this with exit intent survey, like, oh, if you didn't make a purchase today, why not? And then because it's anonymous, you get like some of the most insane answers, but it's fun. You can uncover stuff you may not have known otherwise.
Yeah.
With a post purchase survey, they've already purchased.
Yep.
So, yeah, can I still uncover objections with this?
Yeah, we have a question templates in app that has a few versions like these we call these like conversion rate optimization questions. It's like trying to understand buyer intent and what stopped people. So there's a phrasing of a question of like, hey, what almost prevented you from buying today? Um, Typically, it's like price or something like that. Um, the questions that we love are more so in the sense of like, how is your shopping experience today? Um, Brands, even small brands, but brands are doing a lot of volume. Like, ask a question like that, and they get this endless stream. It's like a to-do list of things to improve the front end. That's definitely, I would argue, more valuable than kind of the what almost stopped you, but just like asking blanketed CRO type questions that build that to-do list on the digital product side of things to improve.
I love all these questions. I've en- that I've enjoyed the discussion here. But what I'm curious about is some of the meta knowledge that you carry, right? Surely you have access to larger trends and patterns because you're seeing, this data across many stores. And through that, we could figure out efficacy on some of these apps or like acquisition channels. So
Yep.
it sounds, I mean, based on what you're saying, it sounds to me like Meta is what will be like the number one in these attribution surveys.
From a volume perspective, yeah. Like Instagram and Facebook are still, so we're on about, it's between 15 and 20 million orders a month this time of year. Meta, like Facebook and Instagram are still the lion's share of responses, like over half. And that should be no surprise to anyone. Like we look at the allocation of channels, like most people, that's their highest grossing channel. Um, and the reason being there is Meta has over the years just developed like the largest data set, um, identity graph on consumers. They're the best at finding like your next buyer. Um, and they have really good probabilistic measurement. So it's in their best interest to like show you the most accurate conversion so that you keep investing or whatever that kind of asymptotally is, where it's like the best ROAS where you do keep investing. So there's a little bit of a play there that they're obviously endlessly tweaking, but that is still the lion's share. And then there's a huge variance as far as what is third um, on a per store basis. Uh, we have a few brands that like audio, like podcasts. I can think of a few who actually podcast is like their number one channel.
Hmm.
So it does really run the gamut there as far as like what the distribution looks like after that kind of lion's share of a budget.
Are you familiar with AppLovin?
I am, yeah, yeah,
I think a lot of folks are probably not familiar with this yet. On Twitter, it's been a hot topic for I don't know a year now.
yep,
But AppLovin ad network where they will run in-app ads for you, and as from what I can tell, they own a bunch of the apps, or it's like plus it's a network that'll place the apps. Have you seen it popping up in
yeah.
these surveys? Do you know anything about it?
Yeah, definitely. And it's definitely driving like incremental. So one of the things that we do is when a new channel pops up, we actually don't recommend merchants add it to their survey for the first few days or first weeks, because what we're trying to understand is like, was this channel influential enough where a customer actually wrote into other that that was where they discovered you. And that was like we saw that with TikTok and we saw it with AppLovin, where brands that started to spend on AppLovin, they didn't change their survey, and all of a sudden, like Candy Crush, Game Ad, et cetera, just like starts appearing in that other response field like crazy. So really good initial traction as far as okay, this channel is driving net new customers here.
I suspect one of the other slept on channels is connected TV. Do you watch any streaming TV with ads like Pluto, anything like that?
Yeah, I'm definitely more of the Amazon Prime Video and getting all those ads. But yeah, connected TV is the channel I'm probably most excited about. And I think that's because the cost of creative is just dropping exponentially with the use of AI. So that's definitely like, I see a world. I think I wrote this on LinkedIn a couple weeks ago. It's like, I see a world where brands that are doing like 250, 300K in GMV, like being able to run TV because the creative cost is so low. Connected TV has opened up more programmatic buying, and now it's like almost analogous to buying media on Meta, but with a
That's how it sounds,
larger
right?
audience. Yeah. So that's probably the channel I'd be leaning the most in right now. If I'm like, because the audience is, we know it's massive. And it's definitely still being slept on by the majority of brands sub like 20 million.
So I know you've worked with some big brands like Bombas, the socks, Thrive. Anything that you gain from them about like, well, these how the big boys do surveys well.
Yeah. I think all like those two as examples both have multiple questions. So we work with a few few large brands that just care about attribution. They're not maximizing the value of their customers' attention when they're just asking one question on that thank you page. Brands like Bombas and Thrive kind of lean in. They're turning questions on and off periodically. They're kind of sampling it. Maybe that attribution hero question is kind of always the start of it, but uh, they're in a meeting, someone asks a question, and they're like, "Well, we could just turn this question on, and at our scale, we could have an answer in an hour. Like we can get a couple hundred responses from our actual customers." So there, a lot of these larger brands are more dynamic in how they think about it. Also at their scale, like the CRO questions are obviously even more valuable. If you're able to catch like, hey, add to cart isn't working on iOS after our recent theme update. Like maybe all your tests passed, but you're going to see that in the CRO related question because someone just went to desktop and then they're going to complain about it there.
Oh, smart.
That's definitely the larger brands definitely get the biggest influx of CRO related data that's extremely like real time and actionable. So those are probably the two things. Is like they ask a lot of questions. They're they're more dynamic with how they think about enabling and disabling their questions in their survey, and then they definitely lean on that CRO question to drive higher conversion rates.
Where can we get your app? Where do we find Fairing?
Yeah, so you can get us directly in the App Store. Just type Fairing into in the App Store. You can also go to fairing.co. To get in touch with me, I'm definitely posting a lot on LinkedIn. If anyone wants to chat, anything e-com related, marketing related, go-to-market, measurement related, you could ping me on LinkedIn. I'm always happy to chat with other merchants.
Matt Bahr, Fairing, thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Kurt.